This week, Ross Greenwood caught up with the Chief Executive Frank Calabria, who took an upfront approach to explaining the cost and consequences of the energy transformation.
Yes, Ross, it's an exciting opportunity to be able to decarbonise the energy system, and it's great that the government have set a 43% emissions reduction target by 2030. But what we do need to achieve that is a very large infrastructure build-out of billions and billions of dollars. That's got to be paid for and therefore comes at a cost. And I think we need to take the community along with us on the way to have an honest conversation about the cost of the transition. And we all know we want to get there because we want a decarbonised energy system, but it's going to take a lot of investment to get there, and that's going to come at cost to customers.
Well, you put the number at $76 billion needed to be invested by 2030 to achieve all this. Where does that money actually come from?
Yeah, that comes from Labor's investment plan that they announced, and that was their estimate of the cost of the energy infrastructure this decade to get to that target.
So does it come from government or from the private sector? Because ultimately, who's going to pay for it, the consumer or the taxpayer? Because somebody clearly has to bear that cost.
Yeah, that cost will be invested by both the private and the public sector, so certainly the government will be playing a role in that, but a large portion of that energy infrastructure will be coming from organisations that are investing in both transition, renewables and firming capacity over the balance of this decade.
But what seems to me is it's inevitable that if you've got all that capital cost, it's going to add to the price of power for both households and businesses. And for businesses, it undoubtedly will make them less competitive. That's what they're paranoid about.
Yes, so it will come at a cost because obviously it's a significant amount to be invested. Clearly what's happening over time is that there'll be the introduction of more renewable energy and storage, and there's no doubt that over the longer term we expect that will have a lower wholesale cost of energy, but nevertheless we've got a lot of investment to undertake between now and then, and that cost will need to be recovered, and as a result that's why I think we need to connect the ultimate goals with the ongoing investment and take the community and customers along with us.
There's just one thing, Frank, I think might be lost in all this argument, and that is the priority right now to decarbonise the industry, or is it actually to keep the lights on? What is the number one priority? Because I'd imagine in my heart and mind that the number one priority should always be to make certain the lights are kept on and that power bills are affordable.
Yes, well, the number one priority is to keep the lights on, and everyone works hard on doing that every single day. And I'd have to say so to government's focus on that, so we as an industry are focused on that. At the same time, we've got goals that are being set, and we also support achievement of those goals, but that is going to require a lot of investment in relation to emissions reduction, and we need to achieve both. So your first priority is lights on, and then over time it's actually to reduce the emissions associated with the production of energy.
So what's the priority is to keep the lights on? Does that mean we have to make pragmatic decisions about the future and longevity of coal-fired power stations? That we simply can't achieve both goals, in other words, keeping the lights on and also the energy transition to a carbon-free future if we go too quickly down that decarbonisation front?
Well, certainly I think the industry participants and governments are making pragmatic decisions about coal and the way that leaves the sector. There's no doubt there's a lot of supply coming into the sector as well, so there are pragmatic decisions being made all the time. I think we're getting to the point now where everyone's announced, or there's a lot of announcements to accelerate the closure of coal between now and 2035. I just think it's important that that happen in a coordinated and orderly way, and I think that's the best outcome for customers, but whilst at the same time achieving the decarbonisation or the emission reduction targets that have been set.
So do you have any feeling as though it can be done in an uncoordinated way, and this could lead to a disruption in the energy markets, price spikes like we've seen in the past 12 months, and also the potential of shortages, outages of electricity?
Yeah, what I'm focused on right now, Ross, is the fact that we need to build the low emission system, and that's taking longer. So there's more infrastructure that needs to be built, and those projects need to be underway. Transmission projects need to be completed for more renewables to come in the system. A capacity mechanism needs to be introduced to get more backup firming capacity built. And so while we are going to take time to get that new system in, and by the way, we need to act urgently in that regard, it's very important that the existing power system continues to perform reliably, and I think we need to recognise That's where coal continues to play an important role, and we need it in there for as long as we need it, but it needs to be there until we've built that low emission system.
Well, when I spoke to the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, a couple of weeks ago, he said he thought he has three options. One is to basically hand out compensation to households and businesses, but he says he can't do this because it's inflationary. Number two, he said he could potentially put in some sort of super profits tax on energy companies and raise money to provide the support. But he said this isn't his preferred option, though clearly they're going to have a look at it. Third is regulation, to enforce the current voluntary agreement that sees uncontracted gas from Queensland go back into the local grid rather than being sold overseas. Now, he says this would be his preferred option, but is it your preferred option?
Oh, I think it comes down to the design of all of those. Clearly, the government is assessing what's the best way to do that when it's a difficult situation to solve. It would really come down to the detail of those regulations. I think what they're very much focused on, as I understand it, and it really is a matter for government, but as I understand it, I think they've been very clear that they want to understand the various consequences and get the best solution in what's a difficult problem to solve. And if that's the preferred course, it would really come down to understanding the detail around that to see if that's workable.
OK, but is the danger or the risk there potentially that if gas would otherwise go overseas to support the energy needs of other countries that, remember, have committed tens of billions of dollars here into Australia to build these plants, that would risk bad faith with those countries if we force the gas back into the local market?
Oh, I think the government, and it's a matter for them, but I think they're very well aware that they want to preserve contractual arrangements that have been undertaken with other countries. I think this is all about understanding about how they best deal with higher gas prices. Remember, our gas prices are well below those that are paid in export countries, but they're higher than they were when customers would have been previously contracting. So I think it's all about ensuring that that supply and price of gas is competitive in Australia. And I think that's where their focus would be. I think Australia does really understand the role it plays more broadly with long contracts, and I wouldn't be expecting that to be the issue here.
Now, I know the takeover by Brookfield is fairly fresh, and I know there's still things to be done here, but as Chief Executive of Origin, can you see what it is that Brookfield sees in Origin right now? Because a lot of people would see this as potentially a very dangerous place to be investing in right now, the Australian energy market.
Well, when you look forward, the energy transition is an enormous opportunity for the investment of infrastructure and the production of both renewables and storage over time. And I can see that Brookfield, through its announcement about wanting to invest $20 billion into that renewable opportunity as the new energy system's built out, is a very large opportunity. They've been a long-term investor in Australia, and they see that as an exciting opportunity, as Origin does, by the way. And so there's an opportunity to really accelerate that over time as we go through our own transition. So that's it's that view of Origin as a platform from which to do that I believe is motivating their bid for Origin.
Frank Calabria, always good to chat to you. Many thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Ross.